So you work for the NBA on a regular basis. I mean, that's a good gig to have, not only because it's the NBA, it's a feather in your cap, but they go, I mean, they're kind of like baseball. I believe basketball season runs, 8-9 months out of the year?
Yeah, something like that. It does it for a good amount. I will say, being English, I'm terrible. People that love the NBA are going to hate me. So when I first got the phone call up, it was from someone who worked for the entertainment part of the NBA. And they said, hey, Orissa, like, we've seen your work. We'd love for you to come and do a game for the NBA. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what that was. So I answered and I was like, wow, the NBA? I love baseball. I'd love to do this. And the person on the other phone was like, well, it's lucky that you're English. And I think that you're a great person because we're still going to have you.
From the business capital of the world, the Big Apple, New York's Middle Tennessee, it says here.
Right.
Sounds riveting.
Oh, man, come on.
This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, a podcast about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals. Mostly.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Matt Wilson, the big voice guy, for this particular podcast that was formerly known as the What's Your Problem podcast. I changed it for obvious reasons, I hope, that it's mainly about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals. And what you can expect on this podcast is just that. The stories, the challenges, the headaches of Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals. Going back to my friend Matt Wilson, you can check out his podcast. It's called the Mostly Marketing Podcast. And he's really good at it. We're both old radio guys, so check his podcast out as well. I may have borrowed his name to a certain extent, and I fully admit it. This is a video and audio podcast. You can check us out and follow us, rate, review. We're really looking, if whatever your platform you're listening on, if you like what you're hearing, give us a 5-star rating and a little bit of a blurb. I mean, I love reading them. You know, if you don't like it, give me a 1-star. That's fine. Check us out at MMTBP.com. That is the website, MMTBP.com. I am your host, Jim McCarthy with JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com and It'sYourShow.co. If you want a podcast like this, you could certainly check that out, and we can make them for you. Today on the show, this is kind of like a mostly Middle Tennessee business owner and professional. You just recently moved here, right?
Yeah.
And you set up shop?
Yes.
If you guys are on, actually the first time I met my guest was at Miller's Thrillers, right?
Yes.
And you were doing I'm going to describe you, probably botch it, an acrobatic foot archer.
I would say that's pretty spot on.
Pretty accurate? Yeah. Right. Obviously, you can tell by your accent you're not from around these parts.
I'm from Alabama. No, I'm
joking. Ms. Orissa Kelly.
Yes.
Thanks for coming out, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's like one of those things that your social media footprint is quite large. And you didn't have to do this, so I appreciate you coming out.
I'm stoked to be here.
Cool, man, absolutely. And I met you again at David Miller's Thrillers.
Gosh, that's so funny.
Years ago. I was emceeing,
yes.
So you probably didn't recognize me without makeup on.
That's true.
And I looked like a dead guy that was up there, emceeing the night and doing my thing. And then you show up out of nowhere and you start doing, I'm like, oh my gosh, at that particular, we're going to get into all things you here in just a bit. First and foremost, we got to do what I call the dad joke challenge, which the music is going to run out here and fade out and I'll have to restart it. But the dad joke challenge, Orissa, is where I'm going to keep track of whether you laugh or whether I laugh, because I have no idea what the jokes are, because Mr. Ed Fox is the guy who does all the jokes for us. And he is the perpetrator. He is the guy behind Trade Bank of Nashville. So if you're a business,
perpetrator of Nashville,
right? The trade. He's behind Trade Bank of Nashville, and he's also Trade Bank of Wichita. If you're a business that has languishing products on the shelves, or maybe things are slow, it's a good option to look into, because it's like an alternate economy that you could trade with other businesses. So whatever your services or your products cost you, the cost of doing the business, that's all you pay to exchange goods and services with other businesses. It's a worthwhile checkout. So all the details are in the description. Make sure you check those out. Are you ready for the dad joke challenge, Orissa?
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah. Hit me.
It's 5 jokes. So here we go.
Where are average things manufactured? The satisfactory.
So I said that you'd probably like him. You know why right now,
Why?
right? He's Australian.
I know. I did pick that one up.
Yeah.
And now I'm even less surprised by these jokes.
So here we go. And you're from, I know if we were from England, so I just figured it was kind of cool. So number 2.
I can count on one hand how many times I've been to Chernobyl. It's 14.
Because of Chernobyl. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're kind of smiling. You're not
I'm
laughing.
not.
It's like a half point.
Deadpan.
You could, it's a natural react. You can groan. You could say, what am I
Okay.
doing here? What did I get myself
Be
into?
more honest.
Number 3.
There's this gun runner I know. Everyone calls him T-Rex. He's a small arms dealer.
Because T-Rexes have small arms.
Wow.
Yeah, I love coming in and
Creative.
explaining the jokes.
Yes.
Number 4, I believe.
My wife thinks I've got a problem because I drink brake fluid. I said, it's not a problem. I can stop any time.
Because of brake fluid.
That's something.
That's not. These are all things you could remember in your
Oh, yeah.
activities
I'm
this
gonna
weekend.
retell them.
That's totally. And the final one, I promise.
Helvetica and Times New Roman walk into a bar. The bartender says, sorry, we don't serve your type in here.
We don't serve your type. Fonts.
Wow.
It's a font joke.
First one I've heard today.
But, don't be surprised if you recall these in the life of the party.
Oh, yeah.
Aside from obvious reasons, doing archery and stuff. So there you go. The Dad Joke Challenge brought to you by Trade Bank of Nashville and Ed Fox. I'm serious when I tell you guys, if you ever reach out to Ed, he's on LinkedIn. He's on Facebook. He's on Instagram. He's here local to Nashville. Reach out to the guy. He will be happy to have a coffee with you or grab lunch or something like that. Seriously. And he's a great guy to meet. So check him out. Off we go into podcast land. Again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Again, getting back to the Miller's Thrillers thing and seeing you do what you do was like eye-opening. I don't think I've ever seen, it's one thing to see it on TV or on social media, but when you see something like that in person, you feel the fire, you feel the danger, and stuff like that. How did I would imagine you had to be a gymnast at some point, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did start in gymnastics at the age of 3.
Age of 3, my goodness.
Yeah. I actually don't remember a day that I couldn't do a handstand.
Right. And it's like, I would imagine that just your joints never got solidified.
Yeah.
Right?
I think I am a human spaghetti.
Right.
But yeah, because I've been doing kind of gymnastics, acrobatics for my whole life, it's never felt too difficult because I never stopped. So I did that up until I was 17. And then when I was 17, I thought, well, I don't want to stop this. I don't want to just stop moving my body. So what can I do? What's the next progression from here? So I got into doing aerial silks. You know, the silks that hang from the ceiling? Yeah.
You see it a lot out in Vegas.
Yes, exactly.
Especially in bars and stuff.
Yeah. So I started doing that just to keep fit. And then I actually ended up doing that as a performance, and I didn't even know it existed as a job.
Right.
So I started performing that at 17, and very quickly I was traveling the world doing that. I would pretend that I was sick at school, but I was actually in Dubai performing at events and stuff. Yeah. So I was doing that, and then I realized, wow, I want to be a performer. And by the time I turned 18, I realized I'm not going to go to university or college, as you guys call it. I knew I want to be a performer. I'm going to put everything in this direction and make it happen. And then a few years later, I came up with this crazy idea to shoot bows and arrows with my feet. And I taught myself, because who's going to teach you that?
Right.
And
it's so unique.
yeah, it's so unique. And I did it specifically because it was unique. I thought, if I'm doing something that's so different, like, I'm going to have no competition in the market of entertainment.
Right.
And that means I can decide my fee. I'm hopefully going to get more bookings. And actually, the plan worked. And it's been my full-time career since 2015.
Wow.
Yeah.
No kidding. So that's crazy. I mean, you kind of put yourself out there. When did you start getting notoriety for it that you noticed?
It's been up and down. I don't think there's ever been one thing and it just stays in this direction. In 2016, I went on Britain's Got Talent.
That's right. Okay.
And that definitely started that process. I mean, I actually always say, I went on way too soon. The act was not ready. I'd been doing it less than a year. I honestly didn't even know if I was going to hit the target. Somehow I did. And it got picked up and it, did really well on the TV, and I got a ton of bookings from that. So that kickstarted it. And then, it was always, having some notoriety because it's a unique act,
Yeah.
And then when I came to the USA in 2020, I really started to put effort into my social media because what was everyone doing? They were at home watching their phones.
Right.
And from there, that was when it really kicked off. And I never put effort into socials. I never did.
What year was that?
2020.
Okay, yeah.
And then within 1 year, I'd already gained 1 million followers on TikTok alone.
Right.
And then on Instagram, I think I had like 30,000 followers at the time, and it's now 24, and I've got like 500,000 on Instagram. So that just really blew up my career from 2020 onwards.
And then you're just constantly being booked. What you do, work once or twice a month at an event?
Yeah, I tend to. Well, I mean, it all depends on the month. Like, normally it's about 3 or 4 times a month. But then if it's my busy months, like October through to December, I did a performance or a flight and a performance every day for the whole month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was intense.
That must be exhausting.
Yeah.
How long are the performances?
It depends. Usually like 5 minutes. 5 minutes is the show.
Right.
Obviously you can book to do longer and have like kind of ambient background sets, but I prefer to go out and give like a 5-minute epic crazy show because you don't want to sit there and watch someone do something for 30 minutes, to be honest. Like, I try and keep it short and powerful.
Right. So, I mean, did you have archery experience before that? Were you doing it with your hands, maybe, or?
I learned with my feet before my hands. And you know what? When I started to learn with my hands, I was like, oh, this is so much easier. It made
with
so
your
much
feet,
more,
it's easier?
No, with my hands.
Your hands.
But
okay.
It made so much more sense when I started learning with my hands. Like, oh, I can equate this with my feet. But to this day, I've never had an archery lesson. And it's not because I think I'm too good or anything like that, but it's in the beginning it was because I couldn't afford it. It was like, I was how old? 18, 19. And I was like, oh, I don't have money to spend on things. I got the cheapest bow possible. And then as my career progressed, I realized like by not having an archery lesson, in my mind, there was no right or wrong way how to do it, which meant anything was possible, and I never put myself into a box of like, well, I have to pull the bow this way. I have to do it this way. So there was no limits on what I could and couldn't do with it. And then as a result, like I've just been really creative with archery. And I feel like now I'm like, oh, I don't think I will get a lesson because I've just never had to, like look in a certain direction.
It's kind of like, I don't want to think about this too much.
Yeah, right? It kind of is because when I come up with, like, I do so many different trick shots. And when I come up with a new trick shot, I do it all by feeling, Like I can't plan it in advance. Sometimes maybe I'll have this spark of inspiration, but I'll get to the studio and I'll be holding the bow and I'm like, oh wait, what if I do this with it? And I'll like spin around and shoot. And so it's so random with feeling. And if I'm like, oh, but you have to hold the bow this way, or you have to do it not upside down,
right?
then I think it's going to limit my own creative freedom.
That's interesting because what you're describing is, I'm a huge Van Halen fan.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Eddie Van Halen was self-taught.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's
I don't
really
think
cool.
he ever took a lesson. Maybe he took, bassist lessons. But he became the guitar player he was and the legend because he just did what you're talking about. Just let's see what else this thing can do. And let's be creative about it, So, I guess you don't want to take lessons because you are highly accurate.
Oh, right? Thank you. Yeah, I think I have to be because I'm doing it in live events. And
live events, and they're flaming.
I've got flaming arrows. I work for the NBA. There's people behind the target.
Oh, my gosh.
So, I mean, there's levels to the different trick shots I do. I definitely have levels. There are some trick shots, and I say this to my followers as well, like this video might have taken 10 times to hit the target. There are some trick shots that really aren't as accurate. And then there are some that I'm like, this is going to hit every time. And so I can put this in a live show. Right.
Well, that's interesting because at least you're upfront about it.
Oh yeah. I don't want to lie. Like if there was one video a couple of years back and it took me like, I can't even remember the number, but it was in the hundreds to get this one particular shot. And I put that in there And I showed the fails before it so people could really see the process. And sometimes I can do a trick shot first try. It might be a new one I've come up with and I'm like, oh, this is really cool.
Right.
And then if it takes me time and time again, I'm going to share that because I don't want people to think like, oh, I just magically did this every time.
So you work for the NBA on a regular basis. I mean, that's a good gig to have, not only because it's the NBA, it's a feather in your cap, but they go, I mean, they're kind of like baseball. I believe basketball season runs, 8-9 months out of the year?
Yeah, something like that. It does it for a good amount. I will say, being English, I'm terrible. People that love the NBA are going to hate me. So when I first got the phone call up, it was from someone who worked for the entertainment part of the NBA. And they said, hey, Orissa, like we've seen your work. We'd love for you to come and do a game for the NBA. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what that was. So I answered and I was like, wow, the NBA? I love baseball. I'd love to do this. And the person on the other phone was like, well, it's lucky that you're English and I think that you're a great person because we're still going to have you. So that's how I learned. And the first ever game that I did was for the Golden State Warriors. And I really had no idea. I'd never been to a basketball game. I've never been really in a stadium of that size as well. And I get there and I didn't prepare. Like, obviously I watched a couple of games before to give me an idea. Yeah. But I really didn't prepare like how big this was. And it was the only time in my entire career that I got stage fright.
Really?
Was they put the things out and something about the NBA halftime that makes it really stressful is that you have, especially for like the Golden State Warriors, you have 10 seconds to get all your equipment on. My equipment's very finicky, like I'm looking around, okay, is the bow set, is the target in the right place? You have 10 seconds to do that. The court's very big. Mm-hmm. So by the time you run out, you probably have 3 seconds to check everything. And I just didn't mentally prepare for it. And so I go into the spot and they turn the lights on and I'm like, not only is it just like all in the round with tons of people, but it just goes up and up. And I think, I don't know exactly, that arena for the Golden State Warriors is, I think, 18,000 people. Yeah. And you just, even though I maybe knew that before, you don't equate that into actual people. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh God, what am I doing? I'm terrified. And I was really scared the whole act. And I did it, I did a good job, but like I was not present whatsoever. It was the scariest performance I've ever done. And the whole time I was just like, I'm a person on a stage. What am I doing? And thankfully that's not happened again, that feeling. But that was the only time that I was like really scared. Was it kind of something you vibed yourself out in a way? Did you have to kind of figure out, okay, what do I do so this doesn't happen again? Was that like a mental thing for you? It's definitely a mental thing. My version of a best performance is not the most perfect performance, not the best, most accurate shot. I mean, obviously I love that, but like it's actually being in the moment. And for me, I want to be so in the moment that I can spot people in the crowd and kind of play with them and just really enjoy myself. Right. And so in my mind, the worst performance is when I'm not in the moment at all and I feel like a person on a stage. That's what I call it. Is like, you're like, there's a bunch of people looking at me and I'm wearing a sparkly costume. This is horrible. And that's what I had. And so, I always remind myself before I go out onto stage, like, be in the moment. You're doing this because you love this. Mm-hmm. That's why you do this ridiculous job, because you enjoy this so much. You get to share that with others and people feel a piece of that joy. So yeah, when I am a person on a stage, it's not that at all. And so I have to psych myself up sometimes if I'm feeling, or, another time that happens is if there's really bright lights, there's no kind of stage lighting, and you can see everyone doesn't really have that stage vibe. That can feel a bit awkward too. Right. And so I have to psych myself up for that.
Hey, Middle Tennessee electricians, handy women and men, and just those of you needing better commercial LED lighting solutions. Yeah, I know, there's so many of you. I have to tell you, there's another option than just the big orange and blue box stores now. Try j2lighting.com. At j2lighting.com, we have the latest technology in all types of commercial LED lighting, from UFO high base, drawers, area lights and shoeboxes, right on down to a slimline wall pack that doesn't look like a fist coming off the wall like most other wall packs do. You get what I'm saying, right? Many of our fixtures are wattage and color temperature selectable, which means you have more control over the brightness and appearance in your dark spaces. Check us out at j2lighting.com for a great local source for your commercial LED lighting ideas, even full color light show dreams. Yeah, totally. That's the letter J and number 2 lighting.com. j2lighting.com. I love the vulnerability that you're putting out here, because you look at your stuff and you look utterly confident.
Oh, thank you.
You know, I mean, it does come across like I know how to do this. I've done it 1,000 times or 10,000 times. I've got my 10,000 hours of practice in it, you know, and it's, I don't detect like unconfident nature at all. So, thank you for that. That's
fake it till you
you're
make
human.
it. Yeah, I'm a human doing crazy things, and you got to fake it till you make it.
Hey, but the thing is, I don't really put it that way. I mean, what you're doing is true and it's real. I mean, that's certainly, it's legitimate.
But when it comes to the confidence,
right,
I don't often feel confident, walking out on some stages.
Right.
Not confident I'm not going to hit my shot, because I wouldn't do it otherwise. But like, not feeling confident within myself. I've had times that, in the past where I've gone through a breakup or found out bad news, and you're about to go on stage and something, has happened, and you just feel
perform.
You've got to put that face on. And for me, as soon as that music starts, there is a switch, and I almost feel like a different person. It's still me, but I don't feel like the person I was before the music.
I call that your autopilot level.
Yes.
Right. So in radio, one of my first guys I worked for, he says, there are going to be days, he says, every time you get on the mic, you have to be someone's hope, someone's encouragement, someone's joy. You're talking about the music, give them something about the music maybe they don't know. He says, but you're going to have days where you're going to have a fight with your girlfriend. Something's going to happen. He says, you got to establish that autopilot level, and that will be the level at which you rest on those days. But most days you want to be above that level, and try and work on that autopilot level to be up. So that's what you're talking about. It's
that's really interesting.
You got to have it, right?
Yeah, you do.
And it's funny, the vibe thing happened to me. Not that this is any remotely on the same level as what you're doing, but back when I was 18, 19, I played in a band.
Okay.
And I was always a competent drummer. But I had to and I've played in front of people before, but for some reason I was playing an original band in our first gig. We were opening for a band called Napalm Death. No, it wasn't Napalm Death. It was, Nuclear Assault. That's what it was. And they were a semi-famous band, metal band. So we were opening for them. And all of a sudden I count off the first song and my right arm just locks up. Like there was just, I'm literally just like,
gosh.
I have no dexterity in my wrist, nothing. My fingers aren't working. I'm like, what? The whole set.
Oh my
was just like, I felt like I was playing with hammers, and I had to literally, I'm like, okay, what do I need to do so that doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's scary.
And it's like I was playing, to maybe 20 people.
Yeah. But sometimes even the smaller crowds, it depends who it is.
You feel their eyes burning into you. Like freaking icicles stabbing at you, man. My goodness. So the NBA came to you.
Yes.
Other collaborations do that as well. Did you have to seek any others out?
So the biggest part of like how I get work is social media.
Right.
Which is why, I, even if I'm not getting paid to post videos, or if I am or whatever, it's like when I post a video, I know that I could make money from that just simply by how many people it's going to reach and how much work I could get out of that. So yeah, like that's a huge part of my career is just making content, and when it gets reach, if I get a viral video of me doing foot archery, even if it's me doing foot archery on stage and that goes viral, I know I'm going to get some opportunities from that. And even if it goes viral or not, something I always tell people is like, say your video gets 100 views. You don't know who's behind those 100 views. And it takes one person with the opportunity that you want to be watching that. That's one view. So I've seen that from videos with less views, and someone reaches out to me and goes, oh, I just watched this video of you doing this. Can you do that at my private event? And it's like, I think social media is so good for reaching your target audience because of these algorithms.
Well, you're fitting right into those algorithms about the entertainment aspect of it, because as somebody's just sitting there passing time scrolling through the feed, especially on TikTok, especially on Instagram Reels, entertainment is the name of the game. There's a lot of people trying to be motivational and inspirational. There are podcasts like mine, but I'm a realist about mine. I know I'm very local based. I don't expect a ton of engagement or exposure with what I'm doing because of the nature of the podcast. Now, I have podcasts, a show that I did called Capes and Hammers, where we talked about MCU and DCU, all the Marvel movies and stuff like that. I have a huge passion for that. And myself and two other guys would just do episodes about the different movies.
Okay.
We haven't filmed an episode of that podcast in, a year and a half, 2 years. It still gets downloads.
Oh, really? Wow.
To this
That's
day.
great.
And it's only 11 episodes in.
That's
so it's like
cool.
that I would expect that kind of a podcast to have much broader appeal. But I mean, what you're doing is it's appealing for a multitude of reasons. It's cool to watch. You know, you're easy on the eyes. I'll want to put that out there, and I would imagine that has to play a part into the business planning of all this as well. I mean, how did you have an agent or anything like that helped you out, that came to you and said, "Okay, you're on to something here. Let's do this the smart, right way," or did you kind of work through that all yourself?
I've never had an agent.
Really?
I've always represented myself.
Have you been approached?
I've been approached, and I've kind of gone through contracts and spoken with them, and it's just never worked out.
Really?
Because what I do is really unique. And most agents will say, okay, I'm going to get you performances. I'm going to get you this. I'm going to get you that. But none of anyone that I've ever worked with, I mean, they'll also promise you the world and not always deliver, but anyone that I've ever spoken to can only see me in this direction.
Right.
And with what I do, I can see so many different opportunities. Hey, yeah, I can perform at events, but I can perform at the NBA. I can do this one, I can do that one. But I can also do sponsorship deals. I can do merch. I can do all these different things. I can coach people for social media, like consultations, all these different things.
Right.
So I never wanted to put myself in the box and say, I'm just going to do this. And many of the agents that have ever approached me, that's kind of all it's been. And so I got so used to getting work on my own that then I was like, oh, wow, I'm getting like quite a lot on my own. And so nowadays it's just like always work like that. And because I get so much through social media as well, it's just coming through to me. And that doesn't mean I don't send out tons of emails and reach out.
Oh, so you're prospecting too.
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. For different things. I mean, like I went through a phase of doing one email a day to some of the biggest companies in the world, and like biggest companies, biggest celebrities, whether it was to get a brand sponsorship. I reached out to Nike. I actually got an email from Phil Knight himself saying that he wasn't interested, but I was like, Phil Knight emailed me, like him himself. Like he's like the creator of Nike or Nike.
Right.
And so, yeah, like I would reach out to these companies one a day to the biggest company in the world. And I did it for a whole year, and I got so many amazing things and a lot of rejections. But if I got a reply, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I got sponsorships. I got sponsorship from Zippo lighters.
Really? Oh,
and
yeah.
I
That's
got
a good
that
one.
myself. And I got a lot of different things from it. And then gigs and TV shows, things like that. And whether or not, even the people that rejected me, it was like I was in their mind for a split second.
Yeah.
Like that can help. You never know what they might.
And the door's not closed.
Exactly.
Oh.
I would get so stoked just from a reply, regardless of whether it was yes or no.
Yeah.
So
And
I do a lot
How
of
do we
reaching
turn
out.
that no into a yes?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And actually, I remember the email from Phil was, he actually said like something like this a couple of years ago. And it was like, I'm actually really impressed that you found my email and reached out to me. I was like, I am a stalker. I can find these emails. I would guess them a lot of the time.
Well, that's a concept I teach my kids, much sometimes to our detriment, is you never know until you ask.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And there's no harm. There's
Right.
no harm
What
in
are they
sending
gonna
out
say,
these
no?
emails.
Yeah.
Exactly. And even the no is kind of a success because you're like, wow, they read my email. They took time to reply to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that aspect. It's like, what could go wrong?
It's one instance of the building blocks of a relationship right there. Hey, I said no to you, but every year, well, my typical response, especially being that I was in sales at one point, completely understand, maybe not be the right time. Is it okay if I keep, just update you on a regular basis, semi-regular basis moving forward? And typically, that's another question to ask, but you're not going to know unless you ask. And either it's going to be, no, I'm good, or it's going to be, yeah, I'm fine with that, And that's, I guess, what I would do in your shoes, especially with somebody like a Nike, and like, well, okay, thanks for getting back to me. I know this is something you didn't need to do. I really do appreciate it. Is it cool if I keep, I reach out every now and then to let you know what's new? And he might say, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
Because that keeps that door open.
That's true, yeah.
I've done that with podcast guests. I champion podcasts for people because who do you want to meet? You know? I hadn't, I met you at Miller's Thrillers. I knew we had that commonality. I used that in the hook when I reached out to you because I'm sure a lot of people, I assume you're getting hit up all the time with messages. And I'm like, okay, how do I break through? How do I, surprise broker, so to speak? I call it, it's called surprising broker, where you're battered with so many messages, but only the few make it through the barrier. And it's called broca's area of the brain, believe it or not.
That's really interesting.
So in advertising, that's what we used to do. That was a technology that we would implement into the writing of ads. So I use that with you saying, hey, we were both at Miller's. Do you remember?
That's smart.
Or I think I said, are you the person that was at Miller's?
Yeah. Always ask a question, because then you have the incentive to reply and say, yeah, it was me.
Right. Because I remember saying when you told me who you were, then I was like, well, that's an interesting name, Orissa. And I remember saying it like Orissa. Right?
So great.
And that's the same girl.
That's so great.
And that's how I got your attention. So I tell my kids that all the time. You never know until you ask.
You never know. And I think the way you reached out, it was so professional as well.
Right.
Like you had the perfect level of like personal, asking about Miller's Thrillers, but professional. And I do get a ton of messages.
Right.
And many asking for podcasts and this and that. And the first thing I'll do is look at the podcast, see if it's a good fit. But also I will look at how professional it all is. And the reality is, like, if you've created a professional brand and you're doing something that, go on a podcast that isn't professional, it doesn't always work or look good for you. So I think, anyone that does want to reach out to someone that has, lots and lots of followers, just make it professional and you're going to have a better chance, I think. And as someone that has, how many, like over 500,000 followers on Instagram, I see messages. I see them.
Oh, I know.
I don't see every single one. If I do a long flight, from England to America or something, and I've had my phone on airplane mode, I could miss a few for sure. But in general, I will see the messages. And so, keep it like professional, and you're probably more likely to get through to that person.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Orissa Kelly thinks that I'm professional. All right. So I'm duping somebody.
You can put that on your website.
It's like, and it's a quote
from...
Oh,
gosh. No, I don't think I'm that special.
I'm going to quote myself. Orissa Kelly thinks I'm professional. Jim McCarthy.
Yes. Okay, then
But I mean, here, because I would imagine you measure, people reaching out for podcasts or, hey, they want something from you. You got to look at, okay, what are their numbers? What are they doing? I'm glad you looked at mine and thought I was professional. I think I am somewhat. Of course I am. But I mean, I'm a realist about this podcast. It's a local based podcast. I don't have huge numbers. Occasionally I'll have a viral video that goes nuts and we'll get some engagement and stuff like that. But it's a challenge for me. But I'm also, like I said, I'm real about it. I understand it's a long haul. It's going to take a while. So I appreciate that. And thank you.
Absolutely. And just to note, like, it's not always about going viral. Like I say, it's like, it's about getting the right audience. And if that's one person watching, if that's one view, but they're the view that you want, then it's really not about going viral. It's just the only difference with going viral is that you're more likely to get the people that you want to see it.
And just so you know, my professional nature, I've never even told her or offered her a drink when she came in here. So I apologize to you. Right behind you, there are some bottles of water.
Oh, lovely. I do like water. Go on then.
I should have offered you a soda or something like that. That's kind of the thing. It's like, well, hey, I don't want to take too much of your time, so let's just get right into it. But, the other aspect of this, I kind of wrote this down. Do you get a lot of, like, if you give somebody a price for what you do or what you're about to do you get pushback on it? Like you have to overcome sometimes price objections at all?
It's a really good question. Not always. It's not very often. usually I can tell by the person that's reaching out and what they're asking for, if that's going to happen. But surprisingly, no. And I have a really sweet story that happened to me when I first moved to the US. When I was living in the UK, I was charging a lot less. That it's a lot more saturated with performers. So I moved to the US. I have a clean slate. Nobody really knew me here. And I didn't know what to charge. So I was like, right, I'm just going to put a price on. And I think I undersold myself because I was like, I don't know like what the prices are here. I get booked for this gig in New England and I was like, I've never been there. I was just stoked to be there. So I charged quite low. And it was for a private event for a billionaire. It was his party and his family were just amazing. In the end, we became friends and his family said, hey, like, we'd love you to stay for, like, we're having a dinner with a bunch of family friends. Come stay on our ranch. Amazing people. So I stayed and the person that had actually booked me, he'd already paid the check. And then at the end, as I was leaving, he gave me an envelope with a lot of cash in and said, Orissa, when you told me your price, I was really surprised. And he said, you're worth so much more than that. And he said, and I'm going to shoot myself in the foot right now because I'm going to tell you, never charge less than what I'm giving you again. And he said, it's annoying because I'm going to book you again. But he said, never charge less than this. And he gave me this envelope and it was money that I would never have even thought to charge. And he explained to me, he said, everything you post online is so high end. You know, you show yourself traveling the world and in these nice hotels. And, you know, I wasn't making that much money, but I guess the clients are booking me and they're putting me in these nice places. And he said, I thought you were going to be so much more and you undersold yourself. And I am so grateful. His name's Michael. I love him. He's like family now and kind of like this father figure that really looked out for me and told me that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I never would have charged that until he kind of told me off for it.
Right.
And then after that, now my fee is double what he gave me.
Yeah.
And it was such an amazing lesson of like charge your worth, charge even more than your worth. And you'd be amazed who will pay that.
And that's kind of like it's a tactic I teach to creatives. When you are a creative, you fall into that fraternity of a lot of them don't know how to price themselves, especially for voiceover, acting, things of that. You know, there are rate cards out there, and voiceover is a much more it's a commoditized market at this point. What you're doing is highly specialized. It's not commoditized at all. So of course there should be understood that there's a premium to it. You know, that is certainly. I'm glad that somebody had that conversation with you because my question was going to lead to, okay, if you're not getting resistance on your pricing, then you're not charging enough.
Exactly.
Right?
Well,
I
mean, now I kind of have the game of like, okay, how much more can I add to this? Like, you know, if I'm going to charge more for a client, what can I do that's going to make this even more spectacular? And so I'm always upping my game, but as a result, I will be charging more. So each year I've seen an increase in my prices. And yeah, like I think when people reach out to me directly, they're expecting like a big thing is like what you put out as your brand. And like, I'm not showing, I mean, I don't perform in clubs, but if I was, I wouldn't be sharing me performing in a dingy club. I'm not saying all clubs are dingy, but I'm saying if I was performing in a dingy club, I would not put that on my social media because that lowers how my brand is going to look.
Be perceived.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that brand image is so important. So if you're showing that you're always doing these amazing events, performing at the NBA, people think that you're getting paid this much money, go for it, charge that much money. Like create this brand image that makes you appear that you're earning a lot of money and then you can charge that.
Do you put packages online that's transparent that people can see that they can hire you, or is it mainly consultative?
It's more if someone reaches out to me.
Right.
Because if I put it online, that's my price.
Right.
And it so differs depending on
you can do verbiage starting at.
Yeah, yeah. And it differs depending on what it is, where it is, what country and this and that. So there's just like, it can really range.
Yeah. I require first class travel.
Yeah, I wish.
But no, those are things that's
you
a writer.
I would, you know, truthfully, that's not something that I get very much. People assume because I do so many flights and so many long hauls that it's all first class. It's not. I fly economy most of the time. To be honest, I'd rather, like, I'm small and bendy, so like economy is not really that much of a problem for me.
Hold on. On your website, it's got to have that tagline. I am small and bendy. Let's see.
It probably is somewhere. It probably is small and bendy. Yeah, so like I'd rather get paid. I think a first class ticket to like London from Nashville, I think it's like $5,000. I'd rather get the $5,000,
right?
Or $4,000 and then the $1,000 for the economy. I'd rather do it that way.
What if you made like a deal with like one of the private jet companies?
I wish.
NetJets?
Trust me, I've definitely reached out to them.
Really? Yeah.
That has been on one of my emails today.
Yeah. Hey, because every time I take a flight, I'll talk about you.
I know. That would be like a dream sponsorship, because the amount that I fly is, I do like minimum. Last year, I stopped counting at 140 flights.
Oh my God.
And that was like in November, and I did a lot in December. So probably.
That, like what you described, is nightmarish for me. I hate flying.
Oh, really?
Hate it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the process. It's process of getting to the plane that I hate.
Oh my gosh, that's my favorite part.
Oh gosh, I put a bullet in my mouth.
Oh, that's so. Well, I will say, like, people in the airport frustrate me, to be honest. Like, there are definitely, like, the thing that gets me the most is when people get off the plane and they take so long. I have zero patience for that. So now I sit at the front of the plane because I get like angry, and I'm not an angry person. But no, because it's something that I do so much for my job, I've learned to just fall in love with it, because if you don't enjoy it, you're going to just spend every day
you gotta find
grumpy.
the joy.
So
it's a reality of what you do.
And you find your process, and I get to the airport early, have a coffee, and I like look around, probably spend too much money in the shops there, and like I've ended up I really love flying, so it's okay.
I get to the point where like I'm opposite of you. I don't get annoyed with the people trying to get off the plane. I understand that it's going to take time. They got to get their stuff. It's a single file line of 180 people or whatever. And what I get annoyed with are the people who stand up immediately. I'm like, where are you going? Why?
That's true. That also annoys me.
That annoys me. It's like, true. Guys, just sit down, until you're ready to get up. 5 people that are in front of you start to, okay, now is the time to get up.
Yeah.
But you standing, so I got your butt right next to my face. And I'm like, okay.
That's true. That's also annoying.
Just sit down. And then, it's getting through security for me. It's like, okay, just.
Oh, listen, you don't have a bow and arrow, so you're fine.
Oh my gosh.
Your security experience is very different to mine. And it's a whole situation. I do have TSA PreCheck, which has become my best friend. Yeah. It's my best friend. I advise anyone who travels more than once a year to get it, because I swear by it. It makes my life. I got that, and I got the global entry as well, because I do a lot of international. I swear by it. But one of the questions I get is like, well, how do you get through security? Well, obviously, all bows and arrows, any weapons are checked.
Right.
I do it very legally, but that doesn't mean that they go through my bags almost every time I fly.
Yeah.
I will have the note that they've searched my bag. That annoys me, not because they search my bag, but because everything I have is very fragile and is packed in a certain way. And the amount of times they've just taken off all the packing, arrows just left, and some of my equipment's heavy. So they've just thrown it back in there. I open my bag up, the bow's broken, the arrows are broken. That really gets to me. And then another thing that's an issue that people wouldn't expect is that I get flagged more for my target for having explosives on me, because I have pyrotechnics on my target sometimes. Right. Or fuel, the residue of fuel on the arrow, and I can have it on my hands. It's on the target. As soon as I see that little swabber come out at the airport, I say to them, is this for drugs or explosives? And they'll look at me and they're like, why is she asking that? And if they say drugs, I'm like, okay, good, we're fine. Right. If he says explosives, the first thing I say is, I work with pyrotechnics, because you think, like, why would you say that? You're just telling them you're guilty. No. I'm telling you, as soon as I do that, they're like, oh, okay. They expect it, but they'll swab. Often I'll come up, that I've got residue, and it makes things a lot easier. I show them a video and they go, oh yeah. But sometimes if you get the wrong person, I get taken to a room. They search everything, every single thing. and to understand why I have this residue, even though there's a bow and arrow and this, that. In the end, they always become my followers online. So that helps. I have a lot of friends at security in airports around the world. So that does help. But I can tell you, like, my airport experience, I have to get there 3 hours to the airport. Like,
you just know it's going to happen.
I know. I expect it.
Even if you were to ship it across seas ahead of you, would that make a difference? Maybe in a calzone case or something like that?
I wish. I get sometimes a phone call is on the day. Can you fly here?
Oh,
and
right.
often, like, I'll do back-to-back gigs. So it's like, fly here, got to fly somewhere the next day, you know, so it just would never work.
What are some common areas you always have to go to?
Well, proudly, Nashville.
Right.
That's, you know, I love working in Nashville. But other places, it can be anywhere in the world. I've worked in over 50, I think it's like 53 countries.
Right.
Some of the more random places, I've gone to Nigeria a few times, Ghana, Bangladesh, Peru. I lived in Peru for a bit, the Maldives. I've performed on every continent in the world, minus Antarctica, I guess.
Right.
Yet. And actually last year, randomly, Italy was my highest performing country, even more than the US. I went, like, I don't know how many times, and for different random things. And I'd never really performed there before, so it was very random that just aligned up. And actually, I go next week again. So, yeah, it can be so random. One year, it was Beirut in Lebanon, 8 times in 1 year. Like, I guess it makes sense because if people see you there, they'll be like, oh, I want that at my event, you know? So
Right.
it kind of happens like that. So it can just be anywhere.
But man, talk about a private jet would just solve that problem.
I know.
Right?
If anybody is listening that happens to have a
Doug,
private
you
jet.
got the following. I mean, you know,
I know.
Every time I fly, I'm going to be talking about you guys, the experience, all
I
that
know.
stuff.
It would save me. It would
Right.
save me, but not yet.
You got to ask. You can keep on asking.
I'm going to keep asking.
I've been
Goals.
asking I forgot to ask the past several episodes. I have a desire I have always felt a connection to this guy ever since I saw his movies in the 80s. Dennis Quaid. I feel like he's going to be sitting in that seat at some point.
Sorry. I don't know who Dennis Quaid is.
He's an actor.
Okay.
He was in
I have to look into
he was in The Rookie. He was in Inner Space. He's done a ton of movies.
Oh, yeah? I have to look into it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Marvel, I know you said you like Marvel randomly. You'll have to have my brother on the show. He was one of the head stunt coordinators for Ant-Man.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah,
Is he here too?
He's not, but I'm trying to get him over here to visit. The very, very big film industry in England, near where I live. And the funny thing is, people assume that my brother is the reason that I do TV and film, that I got into Wonder Woman. I love my brother, but he's never got me into any films ever.
Really?
Yeah. He's helped me out in other ways, like he'll come on the gig and be my safety officer and things like that, but he's never got me into film. But yeah, he works for Marvel. He works for lots of amazing films. He will design the fight scenes that you'll be watching.
So he's choreographing those.
Yep.
Wow.
He choreographs. He does a lot of really crazy things. He likes to do a lot of skydiving and boxing and all kinds of things in his spare time. So yeah, he's a stuntman.
So when you have people like that, I mean, you mentioned you were in Wonder Woman?
Yes.
Forgive me, I didn't know that. What did you do in Wonder Woman?
I did the archery stunts in the reshoots of the film. So they finished the film, and ironically, my brother was doing stunts for the whole film. And so that's why I always preface this by saying he didn't get me in the film. I got that myself.
Right.
So what happened was they finished the film, and I guess they were going through the editing. They were like, the archery stunts in this aren't realistic enough or something.
Right.
They weren't happy with it. So I found this out because I obviously asked them, like, how did you find me? The AD, first or second AD, Google's unique archery stunts. And I come up, which is why social media is so great. This is in 2016, before I really used social media.
This is the first Wonder Woman movie.
Yeah, the first one. And so she sees my videos, emails me, and I didn't know it was Wonder Woman because in big films, they will use a code name for the film because they don't want you putting it online. Oh my God, I just got reached out by Wonder Woman. So I think it was called like Nightingale was the name. So I get an email, we're interested in having you on our film. Nightingale, are you free? I was free. I call my brother up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got booked on a film. He's like, what's the name? I said, it's Nightingale. And he's like, you moron, that's Wonder Woman. I'm working. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so the sad thing was that we weren't even working on the same day, but it would have been really cool to work with my brother.
Did you get your SAG card because of it?
No, I got something else. I was able to get like an IMDb and, work in equity because it's not, 2016, it was an English crew. So I don't think it counts as SAG. I don't know.
Maybe American Federation of Theater Actors.
Yeah, maybe. But I've got
the English equivalent of.
Yeah. So I've got that.
So I got to ask this question. You got to be hit up by weirdos constantly.
Oh, yeah.
I can only imagine. There's got to be a video series alone on that alone you can do.
Yeah, it's real. I've learned a lot about how the human mind works. So I mean, you know what? Can I just say
how the human body works?
A human body, human mind, like the thought process of people, of strange people. I mean, I've heard it all. I've had some really strange requests and. Oh boy, yeah. I get the funny thing is I always joke I have a really big foot fetish following. No hate, no judgment. I'm not into that realm, but you know what? It became so common in my kind of inbox of interesting foot requests that I get. And so I started to Google like, what is this? Like, I don't understand it. Like, how can someone be attracted to feet? And I learn, and this is why I have no like kind of judgment or hate to people that have this. It's actually a biological thing. I'm going to get this wrong because I haven't Googled it in a while, but and I can tell you it's not a fun thing to Google, but you literally have a part of your brain that's like the pleasure center of your brain and the part of your brain that associates with feet, and they can be next to each other. And some people are literally born like that. So you are born with a foot fetish or not. And so some people are born with that and they cannot do anything about it. So shout out to the foot followers. They're very much there and present and, request some strange things, which I don't engage in. And I am very much aware. You know that I don't engage in it because I'd be a millionaire. If I did, I would make some good monies. I'd have a lot of monies.
I mean, is there the thought of a crotch? It's just feet. I
will
it's
say
not like I'm not showing anything else, right?
It's crossed my mind. Of course it has.
Right.
But I don't want to engage in that. If it was a case of just like take photos and put them up and not have to engage, probably would because I'd make a good amount of money. But I don't want to engage with like the messages that I get on that level.
Icky.
Yeah, it is icky. Yeah. So... My
wife and I talk about that a lot. I'm like, my gosh. I said, if I ever kick the bucket or we split up for any reason, I feel badly for you. I hear the stuff I hear.
Oh, yeah.
Solicitations that are just unwanted and pictures of a certain nature. I'm like, and girls that tell me about it, I'm like, that happens? Because it doesn't happen to me, of course.
Oh my gosh.
And she goes, and they're like, oh, you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Just all of a sudden I'll open up my, okay. There it is,
there it is. I don't mind when it's online so much. When it's in person, I don't like that because it's like, okay, no.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
In person?
Yeah, I get weird questions and requests in person. People being strange to me, yeah.
Oh, I bet.
It's really creepy. I mean, I've had all sorts
What's
of
the creepiest thing you've been asked? If you're, I
don't know how much you're allowed to like share.
Sure,
anyway.
that's fine.
Or maybe like the most unique one. And you know what? Often the weirdest stuff comes from the most attractive guys.
Right.
It's not the type of person you would have thought maybe. So
guys that look like me pretty much.
Yeah.
Right.
Supermodels.
Right.
So,
thank you. I appreciate that.
This was actually from a guy who was like a model. So, I kind of didn't expect it. Very attractive guy. And he said, I would... The way he said it was like, are you joking? He was like...
I just don't even know what it is yet, but we were laughing about it.
He said, I would like soft kicks to the balls repetitively.
Ah, yeah.
I was like, what? What?
I can see that.
I've had that. I can't even, like, some of the things, like, guys just wanting me to, like, put my feet, what was the one? I was like, put your feet on, like, weird items. I can't remember what it was. Like, crush eggs with my feet. Oh, that's one I've had a few times. Like, gently crush the eggs with your feet. I'm like, no.
Wow.
like weird stuff. and it's unsolicited. They'll just like ask out of nowhere, and you're like, oh,
hey, you know,
this just got weird.
At least they're asking, right?
I mean, yeah, sure.
Circling back around to that concept.
Yeah, exactly.
You never know.
It's true. Well, I will put it out there that I don't do those things. So.
Well, good for you. I mean, the other aspect of this is, you know, long-term outlook. There's only so much our bodies will do what we want them to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I call myself a walking I-beam. I'm about as flexible as an I-beam. When that starts to become a reality for you, I mean, is everything you're doing now setting you up for the next 5-10 years? You know what they want to look like for yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a question I get a lot is, you know, your body can't do this forever. Like,
right.
when have you considered retirement and this and that? And it's absolutely true. It's a fact. I'm not going to do this forever. And that's part of the reason why I take the opportunities and I do exactly what I love. And I really live in the moment because I know there's going to be a day that comes, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
Thankfully, I will say, like, my body has really held up. I'm 28 now. And when I think back to like 18, I'm just as flexible as I was. I don't push as much. Like, I will not overstretch my body like when I did when I was 18 and try and learn new contortion tricks and stuff, because I'm like, well, that could become an injury. So I am more careful, but my body feels really good. But yeah, the reality is I'm not going to do this forever. And one of the greatest things that I think I've kind of done in my career is build an audience. And when you have a large following, you have a large audience, in the future, and the next thing is going to probably come quite naturally and will be a lot easier than if I didn't have any following. And I don't know what it is I'm going to do when I stop this, but I know for a fact it's going to be what I love.
Right.
So I'm not going to just get like any old office job that I don't enjoy just to pay the bills. Like, it's going to be unique, I'm sure. And it's going to be something that really inspires me. And I don't know what that will be, but I know that I'm going to do what makes me happy.
Right.
So I'm not worried about it. Like, I'm almost excited. Like, what has the future got in stock? Because I can tell you one thing, I did not wake up and say, I'm going to be a foot archer when I'm older.
Right.
That was not an option. I fell into it. You know, I found this thing and it worked out. And I put a lot of effort into it and had to work really hard to get there. But it worked out and it was never a plan. And so I just know that the next thing is going to be the same way.
It'll just happen.
It's going to happen.
Right.
And I'm someone that's always gone with my intuition. Even moving to the US, it was like, wow, this is really working out for me. Why am I going to turn back and go somewhere else? You know, like, so it's going to be the same thing. And I just, it's not something I fear, or I'm excited for what the next thing's going to be.
But as far as having like a financial manager or investment person in your life that helps you with the funds and stuff like that and planning for that kind of thing, is nothing like that? Or
no, okay.
You need somebody?
If I am the worst like spender, but that's a great incentive to make money because I'm a bit of a shopaholic. But I do save. I'm very good at saving. I have a savings. So like, gosh, if something happened and I could never do my job again if I got injured, I will, I have stuff to fall back on. But
do you have insurance policies in place, long-term, short-term?
Yeah, I do. I do have that. But yeah, when it comes to like really planning and saving a ton of money, like I'm not the best at that. But I do have a savings because I don't ever want to be just like, out of it and screwed over. So, well,
I would certainly, as somebody who's 20 years your senior, knowing if I had somebody speak into my life at age 28, on a regular basis, mentor or something like that, I wish I had that. Because now I would have been so much farther along.
As in savings or?
Savings, investments, things of that nature. You know, I was in radio for a majority of my adult professional life. It enabled us to be a one-income family, but we didn't put anything away because our kids stayed home with mom and stuff like that. So all that went into them. Now, since age 40, I've been playing catch up with the entrepreneurial journey and everything that I'm doing now. But it's my mind has certainly shifted. Typically around age 40, I find with a lot of my guests, a lot of people I talk to, life shifts. Like a different season does come about, and it could be start at age 37 to age 43. It's a real thing,
Yeah, for sure.
Everything you were interested in, you're no longer interested in. Like I got radio out of my blood. Out of my system, even though I kind of still do it.
Yeah, of course. But
I mean, that's one of the things that, look into it now, and I could certainly plug you into people that can help you with that. And we'll talk about that offline. But even getting into why Franklin, Nashville, Tennessee from where you were. This is where you're laying down permanent roots, you think?
I love Franklin.
Right.
I love it. I mean, I really don't know if it's going to be where I am forever because, I thought, 5 years ago I'd be in England forever. So it's just, you don't know what seasons come and go in your life. But when I tell you, like, this is my home, I love Franklin.
How long have you been here?
So I moved here technically in 2021, so 3 years. But I did take a break and go to LA because I thought, I was living in Nashville, loved it. But I was like, I came to the US on a whim and just ended up in Nashville. Like, what if I find that I love LA more or this place or that place? So I decided to move to see more places, live somewhere else. And I hated it. I did not like LA at all. It was not for me. And I spent 9 months there and I tried. I'm someone that pushes through, like I woke up every day and I was like, I'm going to make this work. And everything was against me. And I just was, I was the most unhappy I've ever been, for a whole year. And I was like, if this was a relationship, if this was my boyfriend, I would have ended it by now. Right. So why am I dragging this out when I'm this unhappy? It was toxic for me. So I ended it, came straight back to Nashville, lived in Nolensville for a bit just whilst I was kind of gathering my things. And I finally got my place in Franklin. And I'm just so happy. And I love this area and I love Tennessee in general. Like, we can drive an hour and a half and get to like Greeters Falls, this amazing waterfall, and be in nature. I love Gatlinburg. I love even like Northern Alabama as well. Is really beautiful.
It really is.
And so I'm just so happy here. And it's really touched my heart how many opportunities I've had come to me in Nashville. And like everything I tried to do in LA, it felt like there was an obstacle I had to overcome. And I would try. And then there was another one. In Nashville or in Tennessee, for me, everything comes to me naturally. Right. And that's how I knew this is my place. Like, of course I still have to work for things, but they really, the opportunities come to me. Right. And so I'm just so happy to make it my home. And yeah, it's been kind of 3 years almost. And I definitely even if I end up moving away, for whatever reason, I think I'll always have a place here.
Well, did you buy or are you renting?
I'm renting right now.
Okay.
I want to buy the place I'm in, but they haven't put it on the market and I keep asking them to. I really, I found that house and I'm like, I just want this place. And so what I'm doing actually, I'm like waiting to see if any other houses on that street come on the market. Right. Because I found my exact spot. And like, it got woodlands around and got a lovely house. Yeah, I'm very happy.
So I'm going to say we're going to wrap it up. I've got... I was reached out to, I assume by you, on TikTok.
No. Oh, no.
Yeah, Orissa 1.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I cannot count on my hands how many fake accounts there are. Okay. And even being verified and all sorts. And they do a really good job to the point that my siblings have messaged me and been like, is this
Who are
you?
These people?
And they think it's me. And I'm like, come on. Like, do I write like that? But they really look the part. Yeah. They really make it
They rip off your stuff and everything. And so when I get those, I'll just report them.
Yeah, anyone, if it's not verified or have 1 million followers like on TikTok, it's not me. Right. It's not me.
So how do people find and follow you? That's obvious question, of course, but...
Orissa Kelly, Orissa, Kelly like jelly. And I am that on pretty much every platform. And yeah, do reach out to me. I do love seeing the messages and even just people that are, inspired or have a question about my life. Like, I'm always down to reply and get in touch.
Well, there we go. Absolutely delightful conversation.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you again in person. Yes. Hopefully this is a beginning of other meetings and also champion you for your other podcasts that I produce and stuff like that, if you're willing. And of course, guys, follow us along, share, subscribe, rate, review, all that fun stuff. If you know somebody who you think should be on the show, let us know. You can get all that information. The link is right there at the website, MMTBP.com. Or if you really want to type it out, mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast.com. It's a mouthful, I get it. That's why I did the truncated version of MMTBP.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Orissa, once again, thank you for being on.
Thank you so much.